I want to welcome everyone to another episode, another in our series of podcasts, Race, Culture, and the Church. Race, Culture, and the Church. We've been doing this for, well, I would say since, I would dare I say, since a week after the death of George Floyd. And I invite everyone who's watching this podcast to take a peek, to go all the way back to that time, and look at our series. It will give you better context and setting for where we're going. Race, culture, and the church. And I repeat that for my own benefit, but I also repeat it to ensure that we focus our attention on where we're at with respect to the view, as I like to say, not Christians, but avid Christ followers. I think Christianity as a term has tended to lose its meaning. It just doesn't mean what it used to mean. So I like to use the word Christ follower. I want to read this prayer, and then I'll introduce our guest today. They say, it's been attributed to St. Francis of Assisi, but they also say, no, he didn't actually. This is subsequent to his time of the medieval times. And it's called the Prayer of St. Francis. And it goes, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is offense, let me bring pardon. Where there is discord, let me bring union. Where there is error, let me bring truth. Where there is doubt, let me bring faith. Where there is despair, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me bring your light. Where there is sadness, let me bring joy. Oh, Master, let me not seek as much to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that one receives, it is in self-forgetting that one finds, it is in pardoning that one is pardoned, it is in dying that one is raised to eternal life. I've said before, I'll say now, we're at an inflection point, and the pandemic that we're experiencing right now is not new, it's just new to us. It's new to us. Pandemics are not new, it's just new to us. But on top of that, we have social unrest. We have racial and cultural tension. And we have economic distress. And it seems like things are just coming unhinged, if you will. Race, culture, and the church. Race, culture, and the church. I am privileged, I'm honored to be in the presence of Chief Daniel Hahn. He is the chief of police for the city of Sacramento. Someone that, I'll steal from his bio here, but someone I first took notice of when he was doing the public information officer reports on Channel 3. I would just see him on Channel 3. It's like, oh, there's a brother. It's like, okay, he's handsome guy, he does a good read. Come to find out, Chief Hahn grew up not only in Sacramento, but in Oak Park. And actually, we just happen to be right now in what I like to call the 1956 sanctuary of the home of City Church of Sacramento on the corner of 4th Avenue and 39th Street. Well, Chief Hahn worshiped here many years ago. Gone to Sac City College, gone to Sac State. He is Sacramento. Chief Hahn went up the ranks within Sacramento PD, went off to city of Roseville, was chief of police there, and was wooed back, lured back, promised 5 magic beans and all types of wonderful things. And he is chief of police for Sacramento. Father, husband, Christ follower, and he is in the in the milieu of this inflection point: race, culture, and the church. Chief Hahn, thank you again. What's it been like these past 7 months, Chief of Police, in this stew, this COVID, social, racial, cultural, economic stew? What's it been like in these past 7 months for you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's good to be back in this room and good to be back in a place that brings back a lot of memories for me of my youth. I would say the last 7 months have been a lot of things. Have been exciting, has been challenging, has been disappointing, there's days where I'm angry, there's days when I'm hopeful. So it's probably every single emotion that you can think of. But I keep coming to work. I'm just as dedicated today as I was any other day because I came back to my city for a reason. I was raised by a woman that never gave up on anything. I think, I get asked a lot, including sometimes, not lately, not in a year or two, but from my wife, that do I regret leaving Roseville? Because Roseville, by all measures, was very calm compared to what we are dealing with in this larger, more diverse city. And I never hesitate because the answer to that is absolutely not. I don't miss Roseville at all. I'm thankful for the experience that Roseville gave me, but this is my city. And my mom worked really, really hard to improve lives in this city, in this very neighborhood. And I really look at my work as an extension of what she poured into me every day from the time I was 3 months old. And so I think the reason why I never get frustrated for more than an hour or a couple minutes, or never get so frustrated that I want to storm out of the door and stop doing this like 2 seconds from now, is because I believe I have a purpose, and I'm here to use whatever I have to make things better. And so no matter what happens today or 2 minutes from now, that purpose is always there. And I'm not here to please people. I'm not here to necessarily make friends. I'm not here to get somewhere else. I came back for a reason, and that reason hasn't changed at all. And so, yeah, it's all of those things. But I think the reason why I can keep going is because there's a purpose there. And no matter what walks in the way, that purpose still remains and needs to be achieved.
It sounds like, dare I say, you have a call.
I would agree, yes.
In the religious context, we always, I'll digress just for a second. Oftentimes, young women and men will say, well, I have a call, I want to be, somewhere in the hierarchy of religious service. And I'm kind of like Eli to Samuel, go back to sleep. It's like, no, you have no idea what you're talking, go back to sleep. But about the third time, it's like, okay, the next time you hear the Lord's voice, say, speak, Lord, your servant is listening. At what point did you, and again, I'm using the parallels intentionally, that you felt the call on your life and then ordered your steps to fulfill that call? I wanted to be a doctor until I cut my finger and saw blood. It's just like, that was it. I'm not going to be a doctor because I can't. That's a big problem. But somewhere along the line, there's every option or every opportunity to take an off ramp, to say, no, as a youth would say, the juice is not worth the squeeze. I can do something else. And I think God will be okay with that. You didn't, and you are not now blinking from that call. Why?
Well, I don't think my calling was to be a police officer. That's just the avenue that I guess helps with my calling. So I think I knew my calling at a very, very young age. I just didn't know that I knew my calling. So I was adopted at 3 months old. I was born at Mercy Hospital on J Street, and my mom and dad adopted me at 3 months old. And at a very young age, I didn't always act like it. I didn't always appreciate it, but I knew that what was done for me saved my life. And so what I mean by that is, if you look at the challenges that foster kids have, that are bouncing from home to home and don't have a North Star, if you will, or a stable home, stable, something to ground themselves with, they're often lost, whether they're in the criminal justice system or through education or any number of ways. Foster kids often get lost and term out at 18. And so at a very young age, I realized that my mom and dad saved my life. And there's a lot of things I imagine we'll get to about my background that were challenges, but the one thing that was constant was my mom. And so I guess my calling was always to be appreciative of that and give back to the world, or more specifically to our community, what was given to me. And so if you look back in the looking glass of when I was a kid, I didn't always appreciate that. I mean, I was just as knucklehead as any other kid.
Sure.
But I always knew that inside. And so, my mom named me Daniel. All my siblings are named after someone in the Bible. And I never really appreciated the name Daniel until I got older and was able to think about it. But if you think about what's going on now and what's been going on over the last couple of years, if you're going to be in my spot or many other people's spots, you've got to believe. And if you don't believe, you'll get lost, as you mentioned a minute ago. And so, it's kind of weird looking back like, oh, my mom clearly knew something. Mm-hmm. She might not known what it was going to be, but she knew that I would be tested, and I better believe. Mm-hmm. I better believe in something bigger than myself, and I better believe in a better tomorrow and all sorts of things. Mm-hmm. So I got into law enforcement by accident, and eventually stayed because I finally, after about 8 years of being a police officer, realized I can do what I really love to do as a police officer. And I never really knew that before. And that's working with the community and trying to make things better, which, I resisted so much as a kid. My mom would drag me to this church. My mom would drag us to the park, to events and community events. And when I say drag, I mean drag.
Literally.
Like, I was not going willingly. I didn't go to church willingly, actually, to be honest. I wanted to sit at home and watch football. But, and so it's kind of surprising that that I think back and but it must have sunk in, because that's what I enjoy doing. Yeah. That I enjoy helping people and working in the community. And I think back how much I fought against that with my mom when I was growing up. And now my daughters, when I drag them to community events, they're doing the same thing I did to my mom. But yeah, I think, I have my degree from Sac State is in business. And I remember in a lot of the classes, they're always saying, create a strategic plan, do a 5-year plan, or all those sort of things. I've never done that ever. I just am a firm believer, and I think this comes from my mom too. Not because she ever said it, she just lived it. We didn't talk about a lot of this stuff. She just lived it. She showed it. And I just believe I'm where I'm supposed to be at all times. I didn't plan to come back here. I didn't plan to go to Roseville. I didn't plan to be a police officer. It just was where I was supposed to be. And so when people go whether it's the Stephon Clark shooting a few months after I came back and literally a week after my mom passed away, and, as frustrating as that is, and there's so many things going on at the same time, and you can't even grieve for your mom properly, I just fall back on, well, I'm supposed to be here right now. I'm the one that's supposed to be here. I'm the one that's supposed to be running this police department in this time, else I wouldn't be here. And so, my mom was supposed to adopt me, and so she did. My mom was supposed to raise me, so she did. So I'm just trying to do the same.
The more I'm around you, the more I learn about you, and I really appreciate the unpacking of that. Some could be benignly fatalistic. Well, hey, what is what is. I don't sense that. Is that there's an active, not a passive acceptance of what God has laid out for you. These are the doors that have been opened. Some might say, well, I can walk through them or not. It sounds like you've walked through them on purpose. You did not, stop me anytime I'm not saying anything correct. It does not sound like it's like, well, I'm not quite sure. Door's open. I'm supposed to go through that door.
Yeah, I've always, even as a kid, I did that. There was opportunities that would come up, whether they're in college or in high school or something, and I don't know why. Whenever opportunity came up, I stepped into it, and not knowing where it was going to be. Probably what I've said this to a few people in the last couple of years, when they talk about all that's going on and how I'm involved in a lot of this stuff. I say there's nothing anybody could ever say to me that could ever impact me significantly anymore, because when I was in Roseville, I didn't tell my mom I applied back to Sacramento. And so I called her after I got the job. And so at the time, she had recently moved to Hayward with my sister. And so she answers the phone, and I say, hey, Mom, few small words. And then I said,
Guess what?
I'm coming home. Yeah. And she goes, what does that mean? And so I said, I'm coming home to be police chief in Sacramento. And I had never moved, so it wasn't about moving, but I was working in Roseville. So she paused, and for like 30 seconds didn't say anything. I'm thinking, Mom, are you there? And the next thing she said is, I'm proud of you. So once she said that, there's nothing anybody could say to me. But I'm hard-headed. My mom used to call me hard-headed. So once she said that, there's not much else anybody could say to me. So, yeah, I do believe that, I just have this belief that I'm protected. And, for years, my dad passed away when I was 5. And so for years, he was in the Navy. And before I was born, he was in the Navy. And so for years, when I was a patrol officer, I'd wear his dog tags underneath my vest. And it was kind of like he's protecting me. And even when I was a kid, even when I'd get in trouble or get into serious situations, somehow they always worked out. Somehow. And I just believed, even as a small child, somebody's looking out for me. It's my dad, it's God, it's just somebody. So now, right now I'm wearing them. Every single day, I wear my dad's dog tags under my shirt, and I made up some dog tags for my mom. And I'm like, folks ain't gonna put me in a situation that I can't handle. So, or that even if I can't handle it, that it's not where I'm supposed to be. So, now people ask when I'm gonna retire. I have no idea. I assume when I'm supposed to retire, something will tell me to retire, and I'll retire. Maybe someday that will come back to bite me, but it's worked for me so far. I have 2 beautiful daughters, have an amazing family. We are blessed beyond measure, more than I've probably ever deserved, and it all starts, and it's really why I think we can get to a better tomorrow. A woman from a rural farm in Minnesota and a man, a poor family man from a rural farm in Nebraska, adopted a black child in Sacramento and raised me in Oak Park, and completely saved my life. And if they can do it, other people can do it. And if my life can be saved, anybody's life can be saved. And so I just believe, I'll be in wherever I'm supposed to be, just like my mom
The
was.
picture you just painted, it's going to go another direction, but I'm going to follow up on that. The picture you just painted requires us to be, to lean into the situation, to look at our lives beyond our life. That I am, Scripture lets us know you get 70 years, plus minus. We can live 70 years and do our thing. We can live 70 years with a divine calling, with a divine purpose. But what that means for Daniel, for Mark, for Drew, for whoever, it means that the situation I might find myself in is completely uncomfortable. Now I'll tie back to what I was getting ready to say. Your namesake, Daniel, the prophet. He didn't do anything wrong. He just found himself in captivity in Babylon, under the Babylonian Empire, under the Medo-Persian Empire. And the one thing, as we have been systematically going through that book, one thing that comes out loud and clear, you don't see him, shaking his fists at the sky saying, "Oh, why me? I didn't do anything wrong." But he was faithful. He was conscientious. He kind of like the news person. I just delivered the news. You asked the question, I delivered the news. If there is a need to assess, as he did in the 9th chapter, and say, look, here are the sins of the nation. We have sinned. We have fallen. We, not me, not you, but we. And he really embraced, in a situation he didn't create, he embraced the situation totally. I'm hearing that from you. Again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm hearing that from you, that you're embracing the community. You came back to the community. You're embracing the community. You're embracing the potential and the present shortcomings, if you will, looking at that better tomorrow. You mentioned the having a North Star, a spiritual core. God is our center of everything we say and do. How do you? Because everybody's going to second guess. Whatever decision you make, you're going to have those that say, "I would have done different. I would have done better." I hear what you said about not. Well, you can't say anything that bothers me. How do you, like a Daniel, navigate that path in the position you're in? You've got political leaders that are saying this. You have community leaders that are saying this. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I just always try to think to myself, what is the right thing to do? And I can't tell you how many times in management meetings at my department or in roll calls or in citywide roll calls for the members of the police department that I say, we are the Sacramento Police Department. We do the right thing no matter what. No matter if it's going to hurt, no matter if it's going to bring, more work, no matter if, maybe it makes protests larger, no matter if the politicians get mad at us, our community requires an entity like the police department with such vast power to do the right thing, or at least what we think is the right thing at the time. Sometimes you learn later that maybe that wasn't the right thing, but so I do that I say that because that's what I do for myself. Any large decision, I used to in person talk to my mom on some of the large decisions. Now I still talk to my mom, but it ain't in person. But at the end of that, it's always thinking to myself, what's the right thing to do? Not the ramifications, not what's going to happen afterwards, but what is the right thing to do? And the decision it's easy after that. It's just, you just always do the right thing. And so I literally, I mean, yeah, I have my bad days. I get mad at certain things, but it doesn't last long because I'm very comfortable in my skin. I'm very comfortable with who I am. And at the end of each decision, I'm very comfortable with those decisions because I've already reconciled it was the right thing to do. And so, for example, if making a decision right now meant I'm going to get fired tomorrow, I'd make that decision right now and just get fired tomorrow. So it makes things a lot easier. It's made things a lot easier, a lot less stressful, a lot of things. It's amazing how less stress when you do that. And I'm not perfect. My family's not perfect. There'll be times where my wife or I or both of us will start feeling sorry for ourselves. But every time, matter of fact, last time was yesterday. A little bit later, either I'll call, if we're not together, I'll call or she'll call, or I'll text or she'll text, and we'll say, we're blessed. And because we have healthy kids, great family. Her parents are still alive here in town. In the grand scheme of things, we're extremely blessed. And so we have our little pity party for a few minutes, and then we get back on to business.
So where are we going? Where are we? We think we've adequately determined that young Daniel Hahn is the man for this task, this lift. You may not be in Babylon or Medo-Persia, but you're in Sacramento, and you are here, and to go from here to where God wants to take us, racially, culturally, the church. What do you see? Where are we? Again, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. That there's a tremendous schism, racially, culturally. I'll share this. You may not have heard it, but again, I invite everyone to listen to our earlier podcast. One of my mentors, Dr. Fred Campbell of Redwood City, had shared that in this COVID time, he says, Mark, I believe God is speaking to the church. The world can't hear him because they're not his. As Jesus lets us know, my sheep hear my voice and they respond. So he said, God is trying to get the attention of the church. Not this building, but the church. The church. And as he gets our attention, as Dr. Campbell said, rhetorically, are we listening? Are we listening? Are we really listening? And I said earlier, and I'll repeat now for emphasis, religion is last week's news. I'm all about relationships. And too often, the church has fallen into that, rightly so, the trap of being categorized, villainized, whatever, by folks outside of the church. You're irrelevant to the conversation. Who are you? No, look, we've got this now. Let us take control of the direction we need to go. Not recognizing that the church are made up of individual souls. That really is the church. So you're Daniel, you're in Medo-Persia, you're in Babylon, you're in Sacramento. You're in a position of influence. And I hear you. You said, as decisions come, I'm always going to be guided by doing the right thing. So what is that right thing that we are going to have to address, face, and do when it comes to race and culture? It was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King that said the most divided time in America, racially, Sunday morning. Not too much has changed.
Nope. Yeah, I think, well, first and foremost, this is a great country, and I wouldn't choose to live anywhere else. But we got issues. And in my opinion, our issues almost entirely can be traced back to the issue of difference, and more specifically, probably the biggest one of those issues of difference is race. Since the inception of this country. And we don't ever deal with it, ever. So, I teach a class that's about 6 hours long on history, racism, bias, and things of this country. And at the end of every one of those classes, all the students or the people that were listening pretty much say, I've never heard that before. I never knew. And none of it's opinion. It's all facts. So I think we have to address it. And I am extremely comfortable in the fact that I have a belief that nobody and nothing could ever shake. And that belief is that this city, Sacramento, can get to a place that all people feel valued, all people can be successful, all people, there's not this divide. And I believe the same thing for the Sacramento Police Department. And I think I have a right to think that because I was born in this city. I've never lived anywhere else. And I've been part of the police department since I was 19 years old. So 33 years. But I know we're not gonna get there in my career. I know that. And I think that's an important distinction because too many people, almost all people, want to have the magic pill or change a word in this law or implement body cameras or create a police commission or strong mayor, weak mayor, all these one little things that get accomplished with a vote or maybe $1 million. None of those address the core of what ails us, none of them. And then we get surprised that 2 years later when some new incident happens and we devolve into protests, riots, unrest that we've seen here. The other misnomer is that we're in unprecedented times. And you kind of alluded to it a little bit ago. No, we're not. We're not in unprecedented times. What we're seeing today has happened before, multiple times, hundreds of times. You want to talk about riots and burning things down? They were doing that in the 1800s. You could call slave revolts those same riots of those times. In 1906, they had a riot in Atlanta, and the reasons for that riot are exactly the same as the reason people are protesting to this day. In 1906, the exact same things. Watts riots, the riots in New Orleans and Tulsa, more recently in Baltimore and Ferguson. They all are about the same thing. And if we think they're solely about law enforcement, they're not. So the reason for that is because we haven't made a whole lot of progress in what the core of what ails us. And so we keep doing these things that are easy to do or relatively easier to do, are quicker to do, and we can blast those on a poster or a flyer and say what we accomplished, and then move on to leave our city behind for 2 years later to have protests and unrest again. All the while, people are dying. People's lives are being destroyed. People's families are being destroyed. People aren't achieving their potential, and our country suffers because of that. And our city suffers because of that. And so, I said it, well, people also ask, now that we've had some pretty large things happen in Sacramento, that have I changed my goals and my vision from what I had in my head at the beginning? Absolutely not. What I said in my swearing in ceremony was that we need to change the relationship and we need to do things that change and help what truly ails us. Nothing's changed. I still am just as committed to that as I was that day. These protests are proof that that needs to happen, not that these protests and this unrest in our country changes that. it's proof. It's another proof point that we need to do something differently. And the vast majority of people don't do that. The vast majority of people want to divide. The vast majority of people want something quick. The vast majority of people want something easy or relatively easy. And what ails us didn't happen overnight, and it's not easy. So I think the most important thing of all that is that I believe that we will not get there in my career. So I'm not trying to get there in my career. That would be a mistake. I'm trying to drive the bus as far down that road as I possibly can until something or someone tells me it's time for me to move on to something else. And hopefully I'll pass it on to somebody else that might do it a little differently than me, but also believes that we can get there. And then they're gonna have to pass it on and pass it on. And maybe by the time my daughters are my age, we won't be talking about the same things that our great-great-great-great-grandfathers were talking about.
Dare I say you're sounding like, again, I like to say fancy word alert, sanctification, that it is that progressive, it's that process of I'm better than I was yesterday, but I'm not as good as I'm gonna be tomorrow.
Absolutely.
As I'm thinking too, I don't watch too many movies, but I did watch The Untouchables, and I just love the death scene of Sean Connery with Kevin Costner. And as he had always told Kevin Costner, what are you prepared to do about it? You know, it's are you prepared to really go there? As you said, to advance the ball or drive the bus. I like to say advance the ball down the field a few yards, cloud of dust, and then hand it off to the next person, and they advance the ball. That's Chief Hahn. Do you sense that there is a collective, an aggregated will to go down that way? You, as Chief of Police for the city of Sacramento.
By all means, I think there are people that want to do that. Absolutely. But I think there's a whole lot of people that let selfishness and self-interest get in the way of that. So to me, how we solve that, whether it's inside my department or outside my department, is success brings believers. And so when people see something that maybe they were even against at first be successful, and success can mean many different things, then they get on board. And so what I typically say, whether they're the community groups I'm working with or our own police officers, is just trust me for a while and you'll see, because I truly believe when it's successful, they will come around. But you know, change is hard. People, I mean, I can't tell you over the last month or so, I've written a few op-eds that have apparently really upset a few people, both in the law enforcement field, mainly retired high-level law enforcement leaders and community people. And again, I go back to that faith and that belief that right is right, wrong is wrong. I've been called a sellout from the Black community. Not all skin folk is kin folk. From law enforcement, I've been called a sellout. And we just need to keep our head down and do the things that we've always done. And my response is, that's why we're here. Correct. That's why we're here. Correct. We're not trying to do that anymore. Because people's lives are being destroyed because of this. And we have this strong belief that is hammered into us. And I do the same thing to my daughters. I tell them, hard work, hard work, hard work, heart and hard work, dedication, belief, serve others. But always in there is work hard. If you work hard, nobody can take that. You can achieve anything you want to do if you work hard. And that is drummed into our head in this country, that if you work hard, you can achieve anything. You know, people use, even more recently, Barack Obama as an example, like, work hard, you can be the president of the United States. But the reality is, if you know anything about our country, both history and now, that's just not true. Right. Like, a slave could work really hard. They're not going to get out of slavery. in World War II, when the largest migration of black families from the South to California occurred to work in the shipyards to support the war effort, you could want to be a supervisor. You could work really hard. You're not going to be a supervisor. You could want to buy a house in San Francisco or in many parts of Sacramento. Not going to happen. It's against the law. You could want to go to school. You can't. It doesn't allow black folks to go to school. So the reality is that's just not true. And it has impacts. And we have to come to grips with that. And so, we have to know how we got here if we ever want to fix it.
Are we prepared to do the hard things necessary for real transformation? So I shared more very recently. If I have cancer, don't tell me everything's going to be all right. Tell me I have cancer, and then we can start to go down those paths of curation, being cured. But if you tell me, hey, Mark, everything's fine, put a Band-Aid on it, take a couple of pain pills, you'll be fine. No, actually, I'll be dead very soon. I appreciate what you're saying, too, in terms of just, again, repeating past behaviors, hoping things will change. I don't want to, I got so much I'd like to share. We're going to have to do another episode. The fifth psalm, I was just, as we were preparing to speak to you, the fifth psalm, the 8th verse, as the psalmist, the writer said, Lord, lead me in your righteousness because of my adversaries. Make your way straight before me. And of all everything that's there that speaks to, it's a plea, it's a supplication, it's a request for help. But in that 8th verse, lead me in your righteousness because of my adversaries. Lead me in your righteousness because of my adversaries. I don't know, I don't go on a theological limb. He didn't say, lead me in your righteousness or destroy my adversaries, but because of my adversaries, lead me into your righteousness and make your way straight before me so I can do the right thing, essentially, which is the theme for what you've shared today. Chief, you have the last word. Race, culture, and the church. Race, culture, and the church. What would you like to leave us today? We will have to continue this dialogue, but what would you like to leave with us today as in a way of encouragement to those that will be watching and listening?
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to do another segment. I just think we have to believe. We have to believe we can get to a better place. And just because you might not understand, just because you might not be living a life that somebody else is living, we have to be able to listen to each other, talk to each other, and work to make all people's lives well. I mean, I've received letters and emails about how California was entered into the Union as a free state, so we don't have those issues here that the South has. Yet, we sold slaves in California. We had slaves in California. The slaves worked the gold mines here in Sacramento, in Auburn, and Ophir, and Coloma. So it's just not true. And so we have to, one, find out the facts. But underneath it all, above it all, in the thick of it all, we have to believe that we need to get to a better place because we're sitting in a neighborhood right now that is suffering. And is suffering because of people's purposeful actions in the past. And, you know, I had the privilege of growing up here, so I have a little different perspective than people that did not grow up here or any neighborhood like this. I knew the people that lived here. I was friends with the people. Amazing, amazing people live in this neighborhood. But sometimes when you're looking from the outside in and you're listening to the news reports and you're reading the newspaper, you don't believe that because you don't get to see that. But when you live here, you see it every day. I could go on and on with stories about the amazing people in this community that my mom allowed into my life to help raise me. And without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. But you wouldn't know those people if you didn't live here. And so we just have to believe that we can be in a better place than we are now. And dividing isn't how we get there. And that if we do this together and we get to a better place, it won't happen overnight. It's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to come with tears and pain and laughter and happiness. But I, for one, believe, and I would hate to think that my daughters, and if they ever have children, their kids, will be having these same conversations that we're having now. And so my purpose in life, one of my main purposes is to help move our country so my daughter's generation and the generations that come after them don't have to have the same conversation. Because this conversation you and I are having, it's the same conversation Martin Luther King had. It's the same conversation our great-great-grandparents had. It's the same conversations people had in the mid, and early 1800s. That's a long time to be talking about the exact same thing. In our country, we don't ever do that with anything else. I remember there's a picture in 1900 on Easter Day on Fifth Avenue in New York. It's the street, as you know, Fifth Avenue is a large street. Mm-hmm. It's packed on both sides with pedestrians, people walking up and down the street. The sidewalks are packed. And every single thing on the street is a horse or a horse-drawn carriage. And 12 years later, that same street, there's a picture taken, there's not a horse in sight. It's all cars. So in a span of, 7 years, you went from an entire horse economy to an entire automobile economy. People thought it couldn't happen. What are all these people that know how to take care of horses? Well, it can happen. We can do amazing things. When your great-great-great-grandparents couldn't get from New York to California in 6 hours, but they can now. They would have probably thought would never be possible. You couldn't talk to people. You couldn't text people. When I was a kid, my mom had no clue where I was at when I was out in the neighborhood. That's why I had to come in when the lights got on. But I tell you right now, I know everywhere where my daughters are at just because of their cell phone. So we as a country have done amazing, amazing things and have overcome any shortcomings we ever thought we had, except when it comes to race. It's like we don't even want to talk about it. We don't want to recognize it. We don't want to acknowledge it. We want to act like it never happened, or it's so long ago it has nothing to do with now. We've got to stop that. If we want to be in that area the way we are with everything else, we've got to say, it's not about making people feel guilty. It's about how do we make tomorrow better? And I believe we can do that. We just need enough people that believe that. And we need enough people that are willing to put themselves out there and accomplish it. And enough people that willing that the pain is worth it. The pain is worth it. And I've seen our country do that so many, many times on other things. So I know we can do it. But we need leaders like yourself and many other people to do it, else people will continue to suffer. So, but I believe, I absolutely believe my faith is no weaker today than it was yesterday. No matter what happens, I'm a believer. So I'm gonna keep believing.
What was your mom's name?
Mary.
Mary did an outstanding job. She instilled in you an incredible faith, a faith in that tomorrow that has the potential to be better than today. Chief Hahn, again, everything you've just said would set a preacher up to want to comment more. I'm not going to do it. I'm gonna restrain myself, but I'm going to invite our audience again to please be a part of our conversation, race, culture, and the church. I believe this is about our 12th episode. Subscribe. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Play. Again, Chief Hahn, thank you so much. Be blessed. We are praying that God has a hedge of protection around you and your family, and that you continue to, as you said, always choose the right thing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.